I woke up thirsty that night, needing water. Walking down the hallway of my daughter's house, I heard shouting from the living room and froze. My son-in-law Derek was screaming at Amy, "Get that filthy old man out of my house. I'm done feeding him. He's a burden." Amy said nothing. I stood in the dark hallway, heart pounding, listening. They didn't know I was there. I heard more, something that changed everything. Before sunrise, I quietly packed and left. By noon, police cars arrived. I didn't move from that hallway. My bare feet were cold against the hardwood floor, but I couldn't feel anything except the pounding of my heart. Derek's voice carried through the house like poison. "Your dad's social security checks come to this address," he was saying. "I've been skimming off the top for months. He's too senile to notice." My daughter, my Amy, the little girl I raised alone after her mother died, spoke so quietly. I almost missed it. "But Derek," she said, "he raised me alone after Mom died." "I don't care," Derek shouted back. "That old fool is draining us. Once we get him into that state nursing home, we'll have full control of his house sale money. $300,000, Amy. Think about it." I pressed my back against the wall, afraid my knees would give out. 6 months ago, I'd had a fall in my own home. Nothing serious, just slipped on some ice on my front steps, bruised my hip. Amy had insisted I move in with them while I recovered. She'd been so concerned, so loving. I thought my daughter wanted to help her old dad. I'd worked at the Postal Service for 41 years. Started as a carrier, worked my way up to supervisor. Every penny I saved went into that house and my retirement accounts. After Linda died, when Amy was just 9 years old, I worked double shifts to make sure she had everything she needed: piano lessons, summer camps, a college education without debt. Now I understood. This was never about helping me recover. This was about my money. I moved as quietly as I could back to my room. The guest bedroom at the end of the hall, the one that smelled faintly of mothballs and old carpet. My hands shook as I closed the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, trying to process what I'd just heard. Amy had been managing my finances. I'd signed papers giving her access to help pay my bills while I recovered. She brought me statements to review, but honestly, at 67 years old, and still healing from that fall, I hadn't looked too closely. I trusted her. She was my daughter. I looked at my wallet on the nightstand. $17. That was all I had. Amy had taken my ATM card for safekeeping weeks ago. She said it was safer with her, that I might lose it. I'd believed her. My phone sat charging next to the bed. Amy had helped me set up the bank app months ago, said it would be easier for me to check my accounts. But she had the password, she had everything. Sleep was impossible. I lay there until the sky started turning gray, thinking about every conversation, every document Amy had brought me to sign. How many times had she given me my evening medications and then, while I was groggy and tired, slid papers in front of me? "Just sign here, Dad. It's just insurance updates. Just routine stuff." I'd signed everything she put in front of me because she was my daughter, because I trusted her. At 4:30 in the morning, I got up and opened the closet. Way in the back, behind boxes of old clothes Amy said she'd donate for me, was my laptop. An old model, probably 8 years out of date, but it worked. Amy didn't know I still had it. She thought I only used my tablet, the one she'd given me last Christmas. I powered it on, hands still shaking, and waited for it to boot up. The screen glowed in the dark room. I opened the browser and went to my bank's website. It took me 3 tries to remember my security questions. My mother's maiden name, the street I grew up on, Linda's middle name. When the account screen loaded, I felt my chest tighten. My savings account, the one I'd built over 4 decades of careful work, showed a balance of $11,423. 6 months ago, it had been $43,612. I knew because I'd checked it the week before my fall, planning to buy a new roof for my house. $32,000. Gone. I clicked through the transaction history, my reading glasses sliding down my nose. Transfer after transfer, all labeled the same way. Caregiver expenses. Each one going to an account for something called DBM Home Care Services. amounts ranging from $300 to $2,000, sometimes multiple transfers in a single week. DBM, Derek's initials. Derek Brian Morrison. I took screenshots, one after another, documenting every theft. I downloaded 6 months of bank statements, saved them to the laptop, then emailed everything to an old account I'd set up years ago for work, one Amy knew nothing about. The address was my old postal service employee number at an archive service. I'd kept it active for records. Then I looked at the other documents in my bank profile. There it was. House sale agreement, pending closing. My home. The 3-bedroom ranch on Maple Street where I'd lived for 34 years. Where I'd raised Amy. Where Linda had planted rose bushes that still bloomed every June. Sale price. $297,000. Closing date. 2 weeks from today. I didn't remember agreeing to sell, but there was my signature, scanned and uploaded, on a power of attorney document, and another signature on the sale agreement itself. I sat there in the dark, laptop screen glowing, and let myself cry. Not loud, just quiet tears running down my face. My daughter. My little girl who used to make me Father's Day cards with crayon drawings. The teenager who'd held my hand at her mother's funeral. The college graduate I'd been so proud of. She was stealing from me. And worse, she was letting her husband call me a filthy old man without saying a word in my defense. I wiped my eyes and started packing. One small duffel bag with clothes. My documents, the important ones I'd kept hidden. In a locked box under the bed. Birth certificate. Social security card. Linda's death certificate. My military discharge papers from my 2 years in the Army. And most important, the original deed to my house. I'd never given that to Amy. At 5 o'clock in the morning, while Derek and Amy were still asleep, I walked out the front door. I didn't leave a note. I just left. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. The morning air was cold, and I hadn't brought a jacket. I sat on the bench and waited, watching the sky turn from gray to pink. When the bus came, I paid with quarters from my wallet and rode downtown, then transferred to another bus that took me toward my old neighborhood. There was a motel near the highway, the kind that charged by the week and didn't ask too many questions. I'd driven past it 1,000 times going to work. It looked tired and worn, but it was cheap. I paid $51 in cash for 3 nights. The clerk barely looked at me. The room smelled like cigarettes and cleaning solution. The carpet was stained, the bedspread thin, but it had a lock on the door, and it was mine. I sat on the bed and finally let myself shake. The motel room had one window that looked out onto the parking lot. I kept the curtains closed and sat on the bed, trying to figure out what to do next. My phone had been ringing since 7 in the morning. Amy's name flashed on the screen over and over, then Derek's number. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, around 9, I listened to the messages. Amy's voice was high and worried. "Dad, where are you? We woke up and you were gone. We're so worried about you. Please call us back. We love you." The performance was almost convincing. If I hadn't heard what I'd heard last night, I might have believed she actually cared. Derek's message was different. "Carlo, get back here. We need to talk about your medications. You can't just leave like this. It's not safe." My medications. That was the leverage they thought they had. I did need them. Blood pressure pills, a statin for cholesterol, and a daily aspirin. I checked my pill organizer. I had enough for 2 more days. Maybe 3 if I stretched it. At 10 o'clock, I walked to the bank branch near my old neighborhood, the same branch I'd used for 30 years. I asked to speak with someone about my accounts and was directed to a desk where a young woman named Stephanie listened to my story. She pulled up my account and confirmed what I already knew. The transfers had been authorized with my online banking password. Since Amy had legal access to the account, there wasn't much the bank could do without a police report. I asked about the house sale. Stephanie made some calls and came back with information that made my stomach turn. The closing was scheduled for 2 weeks from today. All proceeds would be deposited into an account controlled by my power of attorney, Amy. I requested copies of all the documents. Stephanie said they'd mail them to the bank branch for me to pick up in a few days. I gave her the motel as my temporary address and left. Walking back, I passed the old post office where I'd worked. On impulse, I went inside. The place had been remodeled since I retired. New carpet and paint, but it still felt familiar. I asked if Martha still worked there. Martha Jennings had been a clerk when I was a supervisor. She was close to my age, sharp as a tack, and one of the few people from work I'd kept in touch with after retiring. The current supervisor told me Martha was on break and pointed me toward the break room. Martha's face lit up when she saw me, then immediately shifted to concern. "Carlo, what's wrong? You look terrible." We went to the coffee shop across the street, and I told her everything. Martha listened without interrupting, her face growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "Carlo, 3 months ago, Amy came to my house. She said she was collecting stories about you for a surprise birthday video. She asked me questions about you. Did you ever seem confused when we worked together? Did you ever forget things? Did you have trouble with paperwork?" I stared at Martha. "What did you tell her?" "I told her you were one of the sharpest supervisors we ever had, that you never forgot anything, and ran the tightest ship in the district." Martha reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Carlo, she wasn't making a birthday video. She was building a case to say you're mentally incompetent." The pieces fell into place. The questions Amy had asked me over the past few months. "Dad, do you remember what we talked about yesterday? Dad, are you sure you paid that bill? Dad, you seem a little confused lately." She'd been planting seeds, making me doubt myself, creating a narrative. 3 days later, I went back to the bank to pick up the documents. Stephanie handed me a thick envelope. I took it back to the motel and spread everything out on the bed. There was the power of attorney, signed by me. I barely remembered it, but yes, that was my signature. Amy had brought it to me one evening after dinner. "Just a precaution, Dad, in case anything happens." I'd signed it without really reading it. The house sale documents were there too. My signature again, though I honestly didn't remember signing these at all. Looking at the date, I realized what had happened. Amy had brought these to me during my evening medication time. I took a pill that made me drowsy, helped me sleep. She must have waited until I was foggy, then asked me to sign. But the worst document was a medical evaluation form. It was on official letterhead from a doctor's office. Dr. Harrison Chen, internal medicine. The evaluation stated that I had been examined and showed clear signs of early-stage dementia, memory loss, confusion, difficulty with complex tasks. I'd never heard of Dr. Harrison Chen. I'd never been to that office. My hands were shaking as I looked at the address. It was across town, in a medical building I'd never visited. I folded the papers, put them in my jacket pocket, and took 2 buses to get there. The office was on the 3rd floor of a modern building. The waiting room was empty. I walked up to the reception desk, and a young woman looked up with a professional smile. "I need to see Dr. Chen," I said. The smile faded slightly. "I'm sorry. Dr. Chen retired 8 months ago. He moved to Arizona. Is there something I can help you with?" I pulled out the evaluation form and handed it to her. "This is dated 2 months ago." The receptionist looked at it, and her expression changed completely. "That's impossible. Dr. Chen hasn't practiced here since last January." She looked closer at the signature. "This isn't even his real signature. I've seen it 1,000 times." She called the office manager, a woman in her 50s who examined the document with increasing alarm. "This is fraudulent," she said flatly. "Someone forged Dr. Chen's signature and used our old letterhead. We need to report this." The office manager made copies of the document and gave me a signed statement confirming that it was fake, that Dr. Chen had not seen me, and that the evaluation was a forgery. I had evidence now. Real evidence of fraud. I took another bus back toward the motel, but my phone started buzzing with alerts. News alerts. I opened one and felt my chest tighten. There was my picture on the local news website. The headline read, "Family searching for missing elderly man with dementia." The article quoted Amy. "We're desperate to find my father, Carlo. He has dementia and wandered away from home without his essential heart medications. We're terrified for his safety. If anyone sees him, please call police immediately. There was video, too. Amy standing outside the house, tears streaming down her face. My dad is confused and vulnerable. He doesn't understand what he's doing. We just want him home safe. I sat on the bus, watching my daughter's performance, and felt something inside me harden. Back at the motel, I found Martha waiting in her car in the parking lot. She'd seen the news and drove straight over. We sat in her car because I didn't want anyone seeing me. "Carlo, this is bad," she said. "They've put out a welfare check for you. If police find you, they'll take you to a hospital for evaluation based on what Amy told them." I showed her the forged medical document and the statement from Dr. Chen's office. Martha read them both, then looked at me with steel in her eyes. "We need to get you a lawyer." Martha knew an attorney who handled elder abuse cases. His name was Roger Williams, and he agreed to meet me that evening at his office, after hours, so no one would see me coming in. Roger was in his 50s, with gray at his temples and sharp, intelligent eyes. He listened to my entire story, reviewed every document I had, and leaned back in his chair. "Carlo, this is criminal fraud and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Your daughter and son-in-law could face serious charges. But I need to be honest with you. Proving that they coerced you while you were medicated is going to be difficult. We need more evidence." He spent the next hour making calls and searching databases. What he found was damning. Derek had filed for bankruptcy twice in the past 10 years. He owed $73,000 in business debts from a failed restaurant venture. 3 months ago, he'd incorporated a business called DBM Home Care Services, the same business receiving all those transfers from my account. But Derek never provided any home care, Roger said. He just created a shell company to launder the stolen money. This isn't just theft, Carlo. This is organized fraud. "What do I do?" I asked. Roger laid out a plan. First, I needed to file a police report immediately. Second, I needed to get an evaluation from a real doctor to prove I was mentally competent. Third, we needed to move fast because Amy and Derek had already filed for something that made my blood run cold. "Emergency guardianship," Roger said. "They filed a petition claiming you're a danger to yourself and others. The hearing is in 5 days. If they win, you lose all legal rights. They'll control your money, your house, your medical decisions, everything." The next morning I went to the police station. I walked right in the front door, even though there was a welfare check out for me. I asked to speak to someone about financial fraud. The officer who took my report was named Collins. He was young, maybe 30, but he listened carefully. He took notes, made copies of all my documents, and created a case number. But he also explained the problem. "Since your daughter had authorized access to your accounts, and you signed the power of attorney, this is complicated. We'll investigate, but you need to understand that family financial abuse cases are hard to prosecute." Officer Collins referred me to Adult Protective Services. I met with a caseworker named Janet 2 days later. She was kind, overwhelmed with cases, and honest about the system's limitations. "These cases take time," she told me. "I'll open an investigation, but it could be weeks before we can interview your daughter. Do you have a safe place to stay?" "I'm staying with a friend," I lied. Martha had offered, but her apartment lease didn't allow long-term guests. I couldn't put her at risk. The real problem was my medication. I'd stretched my pills as far as they'd go, but I was down to half doses now. My blood pressure was climbing. I could feel it in the headaches, the dizziness, the way my heart raced when I stood up too fast. Martha took me to a free clinic on the east side. The doctor there, a tired-looking woman named Dr. Patel, checked my blood pressure and frowned. "This is dangerously high. You're at serious risk for a stroke." She gave me sample medications, enough for 2 weeks, but warned me I needed to get back on my regular prescriptions or risk a medical crisis. Meanwhile, Roger was filing counter motions for the guardianship hearing. He needed me to undergo a psychiatric evaluation to prove I was mentally competent. The evaluation cost $400. I didn't have it. Martha paid. "I'll pay you back," I promised. She just hugged me. "You saved my job once when that district manager wanted to fire me. Remember? You went to bat for me. Now I'm returning the favor." The psychiatric evaluation took 3 hours. I answered questions, took cognitive tests, talked about my life. The psychologist, Dr. Raymond Marsh, wrote a detailed report concluding that I showed no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. I was a 74 on the cognitive function scale, where 70 to 100 was normal for my age. Armed with that report, Roger prepared for the guardianship hearing. But he warned me, "Carlo, you need to stay hidden until the hearing. If Amy and Derek get you into a hospital before then, they could have you held for observation. It would look bad for us." So I stayed in that motel room, hiding like a criminal, while my daughter told the world I was confused and lost. Then Detective Sarah Brennan from the Financial Crimes Division called Roger's office. She'd seen my police report and the forged medical documents. She wanted to build a criminal case against Amy and Derek, but she needed time. And time was something I didn't have. The house sale closing was now 1 week away. If that money disappeared into Amy's accounts, it would be almost impossible to recover. I lay in that motel bed, dizzy from high blood pressure, stressed beyond anything I'd ever felt, and wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake leaving that night. Maybe I should have confronted them. Maybe I should have stayed and fought right then. But I'd heard Derek's voice. I'd heard the contempt. Filthy old man. And I'd heard my daughter's silence. No, I'd made the right choice. I just had to survive long enough to see this through. The night before the guardianship hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what would happen if I lost. If the judge believed Amy's story instead of mine. If Derek's performance was better than my truth. Roger had coached me on what to say, how to act. Stay calm, answer clearly. Don't let emotion cloud your testimony. Show the judge you're competent and coherent. But I was terrified. The hearing was scheduled for 10 in the morning. Roger arranged for me to be brought to the courthouse through a side entrance to avoid any confrontation in the parking lot. Martha drove me, and we arrived at 9:30. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Just a judge's bench, a few rows of seats, and 2 tables for the attorneys. Amy and Derek were already there with their lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. When Amy saw me, her face showed genuine shock. I don't think she believed I'd actually show up. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something there. Fear, maybe, or guilt. But then she looked away and started crying. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Holbrook. She had a reputation for being tough but fair, Roger had told me. She doesn't tolerate nonsense in her courtroom. Amy's lawyer started first. He painted a picture of a devoted daughter, caring for her elderly father, who'd become increasingly confused and difficult. He talked about my disappearance as proof I couldn't care for myself. Then Amy testified. She sat in the witness box, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, and lied. She talked about conversations I supposedly couldn't remember, bills I supposedly forgot to pay, times I supposedly got lost in my own neighborhood. She produced the forged Dr. Chen evaluation as evidence. She had bank statements showing my accounts under her control. She even had statements from neighbors saying, I seemed confused when I lived alone. Roger cross-examined her carefully. Miss Morrison, when exactly did you notice your father showing signs of dementia? About a year ago, Amy said. Little things at first, forgetting names, repeating himself. And yet you didn't seek medical evaluation until 2 months ago? I was hoping it was just normal aging, Amy said, crying harder. I didn't want to believe it. Roger let that sit for a moment, then asked, and the $32,000 transferred from your father's account to your husband's business. What were those payments for? Amy's composure slipped slightly. Those were for caregiver services. Derek helped care for my father. What specific services did your husband provide? Helping with meals, medications, transportation? Roger pulled out a document. According to your husband's business registration, DBM Home Care Services was incorporated 3 months ago. But these transfers started 6 months ago. How did he bill for services from a company that didn't exist yet? Amy stammered. I don't know the details of Derek's business filing dates. Roger pressed. And Dr. Chen, the physician who evaluated your father, when did he examine him? 2 months ago, as the document shows. Roger handed the judge the statement from Dr. Chen's office. Your Honor, Dr. Harrison Chen retired 8 months ago and moved to Arizona. This evaluation is a forgery. The medical practice has provided a sworn statement to that effect. The courtroom went silent. Judge Holbrook read the statement, then looked at Amy with an expression that could freeze water. Derek suddenly stood up. You ungrateful old man, he shouted at me. We took you in when no one else would. We fed you, housed you, and this is how you repay us? Mr. Morrison, sit down, Judge Holbrook said sharply. But Derek was unraveling. We gave him everything, and he accuses us of theft? After everything we sacrificed? His lawyer was pulling at his sleeve, trying to get him to sit down and be quiet, but Derek kept ranting. Amy was crying, trying to shush him, but he wouldn't stop. You don't understand what it's like having him in our house, Derek yelled. The smell, the constant demands, the burden. Mr. Morrison, I will hold you in contempt if you don't sit down right now, the judge said. Derek finally sat, but the damage was done. His mask had slipped. The judge had seen the real man underneath. Then it was my turn to testify. Roger walked me through my background. 41 years at the Postal Service, raising Amy alone after Linda died, my fall 6 months ago, and Amy's offer to help while I recovered. I described the night I overheard Derek's rant. I repeated his words exactly. Get that filthy old man out of my house. I'm done feeding him. I explained how Amy had brought papers for me to sign while I was groggy from evening medications, how she'd taken control of my accounts and my ATM card, how Derek had created a fake business to steal from me. Roger asked me to demonstrate my memory. I recited my social security number, my bank account numbers, my home address, my phone number. I gave the dates of Amy's birth, her graduation, her wedding. I named every postal route I'd supervised in my last 10 years of work. The judge asked me questions directly. Mr. Morrison, the Carlo Morrison, can you tell me what you had for breakfast this morning? Scrambled eggs and toast with coffee at the diner on 5th Street, I answered. Martha drove me there at 7:30. The waitress's name was Diana. She has 3 kids, and just started working there 2 weeks ago. Judge Holbrook almost smiled. And why did you leave your daughters home? Because I realized they were stealing from me and planning to have me declared incompetent so they could sell my house and take all my money. I left to protect myself and to gather evidence of their fraud. The judge reviewed all the documents, the forged medical evaluation, the bank statements showing the transfers, the power of attorney I'd signed under duress, Derek's bankruptcy records, and business filings. Finally, she looked up. I'm denying the guardianship petition. Furthermore, I'm finding probable cause for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. I'm issuing an emergency order, freezing all of Mr. Carlo Morrison's assets and halting the house sale pending investigation. Miss Morrison and Mr. Carlo Morrison's. Derek Morrison are ordered to return all ATM cards, account access, and documents to Mr. Carlo Morrison immediately. I'm also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. I'd won, but as we left the courtroom, Derek grabbed Amy's arm and pulled her toward the exit. They ran. Just ran right out of the courthouse and toward the parking lot. Roger and I followed, but by the time we got outside, they'd jumped in their car and were speeding away. Roger immediately called Detective Brennan. She put out an alert, but it was too late. Derek and Amy were gone. An hour later, Detective Brennan called back with worse news. During the court recess, Derek had accessed my bank account from his phone one last time. He'd transferred every penny left in my checking account, $18,000, to an offshore account he'd set up weeks ago. They'd cleaned out their own accounts, too. Their house was being foreclosed on anyway. They had nothing to lose. By evening, arrest warrants were issued for both of them. But they'd vanished. I sat in Roger's office, feeling empty. I'd won the legal battle. My house was safe. But my daughter, my only child, was now a fugitive. And nearly all my money was gone. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. I moved back into my own house, the one on Maple Street, but it felt wrong. Empty. Cold. Every room had memories of Amy growing up. Her height marks on the kitchen door frame. The scratches in the hardwood where she'd dragged her toy box. The bedroom that had been hers, still with the same pale yellow paint Linda had chosen when Amy was 7. I couldn't afford to heat the whole house, so I kept most rooms closed off and lived in the kitchen and my bedroom. Martha brought me groceries. Roger worked on freezing and recovering what assets he could, but it was a slow process. Neighbors whispered when I walked by. Some still believed Amy's story about my dementia. Others had seen the news about the arrest warrants and didn't know what to think. Detective Brennan kept me updated. Amy and Derek had used credit cards in Nevada, then Arizona, gas stations, fast food restaurants. Then the trail went cold. They'd probably ditched the car and gone to cash only. I couldn't access most of my money because it was frozen as evidence. I was living on my Social Security check, which was barely enough to cover utilities and food. The house needed repairs I couldn't afford. A pipe in the bathroom was leaking. The furnace was making strange noises. I was 77 years old, alone, broke, and my daughter was gone. Then, 3 weeks after the hearing, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Dad? Amy's voice. Crying. My heart did something complicated. Part of me wanted to hang up. Part of me wanted to scream at her. Part of me just wanted my daughter back. Dad, I'm so sorry. Her voice was shaking. I didn't want any of this. Derek made me do it. He threatened me. He said if I didn't help him, he'd hurt me. Where are you? I asked. She wouldn't say, but she sounded desperate. Derek left me. He took all the money. I have nothing. I'm staying at a shelter for domestic violence victims. I'm scared, Dad. Amy, you stole from me. You let Derek call me filthy. You said nothing. I know. I know. I was weak. I was afraid. But Dad, I'm still your daughter. Please. I want to come home. I want to make this right. We talked for 20 minutes. She told me Derek had been planning this for over a year, that he'd targeted her specifically because of my house and savings, that he'd been controlling and manipulative from the beginning of their relationship. She claimed she'd only realized how bad things were after it was too late, that she'd been afraid of Derek, afraid of what he'd do if she didn't cooperate. I wanted to believe her. God help me, part of me wanted to believe her. But then I remembered her voice in court, her lies, her tears that seemed so real, but weren't. I called Detective Brennan and told her about the call. She traced the number, Texas, a women's shelter in Austin. Detective Brennan was blunt. Carlo, this could be a trap. Derek might be using her to figure out your plans or finances, or she might be trying to avoid prison time. But she could also be telling the truth, I said. Could be, the detective admitted. But even if she was being coerced, she still participated in stealing from you. She'll face charges. Roger Williams said the same thing. Amy was an adult who made choices. She could claim duress, but she'd still broken laws. I had to decide. Did I help my daughter? Or did I let her face the consequences of her actions? I told Amy I'd help her, but only on one condition. She had to turn herself in and cooperate fully with the police. No more running. No more lies. There was a long silence on the phone. Then, quietly, she agreed. Detective Brennan coordinated with Austin police. Amy surrendered herself voluntarily. She was arrested, processed, and held for extradition back to our state. And once she was in custody, facing real consequences, she told them everything. Derek had 6 prior victims, 6 other elderly parents of women he'd married or dated over the past 10 years. He'd stolen over $400,000 total. He'd used the money for gambling, for failed business ventures, and to support a second family in Colorado, a woman and 2 children, who had no idea he was married to Amy. Amy provided evidence. Recordings she'd secretly made, emails where Derek outlined his plans, bank records she'd kept hidden. She handed over everything to get a plea deal. With Amy's cooperation, police finally located Derek. He was in Mexico, in a beach town south of Cancun, living under a false name. Mexican authorities arrested him. Extradition proceedings began. 2 months later, Derek was brought back in handcuffs. But Amy, because she cooperated and because prosecutors believed her claims of coercion, got a deal. She'd plead guilty to conspiracy and financial exploitation. 5 years probation instead of prison, mandatory restitution to all of Derek's victims, including me, community service, mandatory therapy. She called me from jail before the plea hearing. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know I'm sorry. I was stupid and weak, and I hurt you in ways I can never fix. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. The plea hearing happened without me. I couldn't watch my daughter stand in front of a judge and admit to crimes against me. Derek's trial was different. That I attended. I sat in the gallery and watched as the prosecution laid out his pattern of abuse and fraud. Victim after victim testified. Elderly people he'd targeted through their children, families he'd destroyed. The jury convicted him on 14 federal counts. Wire fraud, elder abuse, money laundering, interstate flight from prosecution. At sentencing, the judge gave him 23 years in federal prison. He'll be 70 when he gets out, if he lives that long. As they led Derek away in handcuffs, he looked at me. Just for a second. I saw no remorse there, just anger that he'd been caught. 6 months after everything fell apart, I was still trying to put my life back together. Roger had managed to recover $78,000 through asset seizures from Derek's accounts and the sale of items he'd bought with my money. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to live on if I was careful. My house was mine again, fully. The sale had been canceled, and my name was the only one on the deed. I'd made some repairs with the recovered money. Fixed the pipe, serviced the furnace, replaced the broken windows. Martha still checked on me every week. She'd bring groceries and stay for coffee. We'd talk about old times at the post office, anything except Amy and Derek. My health had stabilized. Regular medications, less stress. Dr. Patel at the free clinic had taken me on as a permanent patient and charged me what I could afford. But I was lonely. The house felt too big for one person. I'd lived here with Linda, raised Amy here, and now I was alone again at 67 with nothing but memories. Amy's letters started arriving around month 4 of her probation. She was living in a supervised apartment, working as a waitress at a diner, attending therapy 3 times a week. Her probation officer watched her closely. She had to pay me $400 every month in restitution. It would take 10 years to pay back what she'd stolen. Her letters said the same things. I'm sorry, Dad. I was weak. I was controlled. I want to heal our relationship. Can we talk? Can we meet? I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. Detective Brennan closed her case. She called to tell me she was satisfied with the outcome. Derek in prison, Amy on probation, money recovered. As far as the justice system was concerned, this was resolved. But it didn't feel resolved to me. I started attending a support group for elder abuse victims. It met every Tuesday at the community center. There were 8 of us, all over 60, all dealing with the aftermath of being victimized by people we trusted. One woman, Eleanor, had a son who'd stolen her entire retirement, over $200,000. She'd never seen him again after she reported him to police. He'd fled the state and never returned. She talked about the pain of losing not just her money, but her child. At least you have a chance, she told me one evening. Your daughter is still here. She's trying to make amends. You could rebuild something if you wanted to. Could I? I didn't know. At month 5, Amy showed up at my door. She didn't call first. Just appeared one Saturday morning, looking thin and tired. She was wearing her waitress uniform, clearly coming from an overnight shift. I almost closed the door. But something stopped me. Dad, I'm not asking to come in. I just wanted you to see me, to see that I'm working, that I'm trying. I know I destroyed everything. I know you may never forgive me, but I need you to know I'm trying to become someone you could be proud of again. Her voice cracked. I'm going to therapy. I'm working on understanding why I let Derek manipulate me, why I was so weak. The therapist says I have codependency issues, that I was vulnerable to his control. But that doesn't excuse what I did to you. She set an envelope on the porch. That's this month's restitution payment, plus an extra $100. I saved from tips. I know it's not much, I know it doesn't fix anything. Then she left, just walked back to her car, and drove away. I stood there for a long time before I picked up the envelope. Inside was $500 in cash and a handwritten note. I counted the money 3 times at the kitchen table, then put it in the drawer where I kept important papers. The note, I didn't read right away. I left it on the counter for 2 days before I finally opened it. Dad, it read, I can't change what I did. I can't take back the pain I caused you. All I can do is try to be better. To become the person Mom would have wanted me to be. The person you raised me to be. I failed her memory. I failed you. I'm trying not to fail myself. Love. Amy. I put the note in that same drawer and tried not to think about it. 2 weeks later, I called Roger. If I wanted to meet with Amy, what would that look like? Roger set it up. Neutral location, his office conference room, with him present as a buffer. Amy arrived exactly on time, looking nervous. I was already there, sitting at the big table, hands folded in front of me. We sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, I need you to understand something. You hurt me worse than Derek ever could. He was a stranger, a criminal, but you were my daughter. I raised you, loved you, and you let him call me filthy. You watched him steal my life savings. You said nothing. Amy's face crumpled. I know. There's no excuse. Were you really afraid of him? Or is that just a convenient story? She looked me in the eye. Both. I was afraid. He was controlling, and sometimes violent. But I also wanted the money. I wanted to believe his promises about what we'd do with it. I'm not going to lie to you anymore, Dad. I was afraid, but I was also greedy and stupid and weak. The honesty surprised me. Do you remember your mother? I asked. Amy nodded. Some things. She used to sing while she cooked. She smelled like lavender. She always made sure I had a nightlight because I was afraid of the dark. She died when you were 9. Breast cancer. It took her fast. She was gone in 6 months from diagnosis. I know, Amy whispered. After she died, I worked double shifts so you could have everything you needed. Piano lessons. Summer camp. I put you through college, without loans. I did everything I could to honor her memory by giving you a good life. You did, Dad. You were the best father, and you repaid me by stealing from me, by letting your husband abuse me, by forging medical documents and trying to have me declared incompetent. Amy was crying now. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. I leaned back in my chair. Can you really make this up? How do you give someone back their trust after you've destroyed it? I don't know, Amy said. But I'm going to try. I'm going to keep paying you back. I'm going to keep going to therapy. I'm going to prove to you that the person I was with Derek isn't who I really am. Who are you really? I asked. I don't know yet, she admitted. But I want to find out. And I want that person to be someone you can be proud of. Roger had been sitting quietly, taking notes. He cleared his throat. Carlo, I think Amy has been honest today. The question is, what do you want? I thought about Eleanor from the support group, her son who'd vanished and never looked back. I thought about all those years I'd raised Amy alone, trying to be both mother and father to her. I thought about Linda and what she would have wanted. I want limited contact, I finally said. Supervised visits, slow rebuilding. You keep working, keep paying restitution, keep going to therapy. If you prove yourself over time, maybe we can have something again. But it will take years, Amy. Years. Amy nodded eagerly. I'll do it, whatever it takes. And if you mess up again, if you lie to me even once, we're done. Forever. I understand. We set up a schedule. Coffee once a month at a public place. Supervised visits at holidays. She'd continue her restitution payments. We'd see how things went. As Amy left, she paused at the door. Dad, I remember something else about Mom. She used to tell me that people make mistakes, but families forgive. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but thank you for giving me the chance to earn it. After she left, Roger asked me, do you think you'll ever really forgive her? I don't know, I said honestly, but I think I want to try. A year and a half after that terrible night when I heard Derek call me a filthy old man, I sat on my front porch watching the neighborhood wake up. It was early spring, and Linda's rose bushes were budding. I'd pruned them myself last week, something I hadn't had the energy to do in years. Derek was serving his 23-year sentence in a federal prison in Pennsylvania. I didn't think about him much anymore. He was where he belonged. Amy was finishing her second year of probation. She'd been promoted to shift manager at the diner where she worked. Her restitution payments came on time every month, and she'd never missed a single scheduled visit with me. We met for coffee once a month, and she'd been over for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Supervised at first, with Martha or Roger there. But the last 2 visits had been just the 2 of us. It was still awkward sometimes. There were topics we couldn't discuss. Long silences where we both knew we were thinking about what happened. But we were trying. That had to count for something. The previous week, Amy had shown me her therapy journal. Her counselor had her write letters to people she'd hurt, even if she never sent them. There were dozens of letters to me, pages and pages of apologies, explanations, and promises to do better. "I don't need you to read them all," she'd said. "I just wanted you to know I think about it every day. What I did to you. How I can be better." Through Roger's continued work, we'd managed to recover $93,000 total. Combined with my Social Security and careful budgeting, I was stable. Not wealthy, but secure enough. I'd started volunteering at the senior center downtown. 3 days a week, I helped run a program teaching elderly people how to recognize financial scams and elder abuse. I shared my story, warning others about the signs I'd missed, how family members can manipulate and exploit, how important it is to keep control of your own finances. The work was rewarding. I'd helped at least a dozen people recognize abuse situations and take action. One woman, Gloria, had a daughter similar to Amy. Gloria used what she learned in my class to protect herself before things got as bad as they'd gotten for me. Detective Brennan called me sometimes to consult on elder abuse cases. My experience had taught me what to look for, what questions to ask. I'd become an unofficial advocate. Martha still visited every week. We'd become closer friends than we'd ever been during our post office days. She'd met a widower at the senior center, a man named Tom who made her laugh. I liked him. They'd started dating, and I was happy for her. On this particular morning, as I sat on my porch with coffee, a car pulled up. Amy got out, carrying a small box. "I wasn't expecting you today," I said. "I know. I'm sorry to just drop by, but I wanted to show you something." She opened the box. Inside were old photos. Me and Linda on our wedding day. Amy as a baby. Family pictures from when she was growing up. Linda holding Amy at her kindergarten graduation. "I've been going through storage," Amy said. "These were in boxes at a friend's house. I thought you might want them." I picked up a photo of Linda. She was laughing in it, her head thrown back, joy radiating from her face. I'd taken that picture at a beach vacation when Amy was 6. We'd been so happy that week. "Your mother was a good woman," I said. "She would have been disappointed in what you did." Amy's voice was quiet. "I know. I've thought about that a lot. In therapy, we talk about living up to the memory of people we've lost. Mom loved you so much, Dad. She'd be horrified that I hurt you. She would be. But I think," Amy continued carefully, "that she'd also believe people can change, can grow, can become better than their worst mistakes." I looked at my daughter. She looked older than her 38 years. The stress and consequences of her choices had aged her. But there was something different in her eyes now. Something clearer. "Honest. Maybe," I said. "Your mother always believed in second chances." We sat together on that porch for an hour, looking through old photos, remembering better times. It didn't erase what had happened, but it was a start. That evening, I spoke at the senior center for a financial literacy class. About 50 people attended, most of them over 60. I told them my story, not to scare them, but to educate them. I explained the warning signs. Family members who isolate you, who take control of your finances in the name of helping, who make you doubt your own memory and competence, who forge documents or coerce you while you're medicated or vulnerable. I told them about the importance of keeping your own records, having a trusted friend outside the family who can check on you, never signing documents you don't fully understand, getting second opinions on medical evaluations. An older man raised his hand. What if the abuse is coming from your own child? How do you fight that? It's the hardest thing in the world, I said honestly, because you love them. You want to believe the best of them, but you have to love yourself too. You have to protect yourself, even from your own children if necessary. After the talk, several people came up to thank me. One woman, crying, admitted her son had been stealing from her. She'd been too ashamed to tell anyone. I gave her Roger's card and Detective Brennan's contact information. Driving home that night, I thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the fight, the slow healing. Derek had called me a filthy old man, thinking he'd broken me, thinking I was weak and helpless. He'd been wrong. I'd stood up. I'd fought back. I'd gathered evidence, filed reports, testified in court. I'd protected myself and my assets. I'd helped put a serial predator in prison and prevented him from victimizing others. And maybe, just maybe, I was helping my daughter become a better person. Someone Linda would have been proud of. Someone I could be proud of again. The real victory wasn't the money I recovered, or seeing Derek in prison. The real victory was knowing I hadn't let them destroy me. I'd survived. I'd rebuilt. I'd turned my pain into purpose by helping others. I was 67 years old. I'd lost my wife too young, been betrayed by my daughter, and had my life savings stolen. But I was still here, still fighting, still trying to make a difference. When Derek called me a filthy old man, he saw someone to exploit, someone weak and vulnerable. He didn't know who he was dealing with. He didn't know I'd worked 41 years in one of the toughest jobs in America, that I'd raised a child alone through grief and hardship, that I'd survived loss and disappointment and kept going. I wasn't just a victim, I was a survivor, an advocate, a fighter. And in the end, that's what matters. Not that I was knocked down, but that I got back up. I pulled into my driveway, looked at my house, the one I'd saved, and smiled. Linda's rose bushes would bloom soon. Spring was coming, and I was still here to see it. Life had tested me in ways I never expected. I'd been betrayed by the person I loved most. I'd lost almost everything, but I'd found strength I didn't know I had. And I'd learned that survival isn't just about enduring. It's about fighting back, about refusing to be erased, or dismissed, or destroyed. Derek thought he could break me, but he just made me stronger. And that, more than anything else, was my victory. I want to leave you with this question. Have you or someone you love ever faced betrayal from family? How did you find the strength to keep going? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's struggling right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories of survival and resilience. And share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they think. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, no matter what life throws at you, no matter who betrays you, you have the power to stand up and fight back. You are stronger than you know. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.